Welcome back to the channel. So we have with us again today, good friend of mine, becoming a better and better friend all the time, Sami Steigmann. How are you?
Good morning, everybody. So far, so good. I am always curious, okay, with and waiting with anticipation what you're going to ask.
Okay, so as everybody knows, the rules are that I'm allowed to ask you any question that I think up of. Now the thing is that this week I'm actually gonna be like a machine gun. I have one main question, but there's gonna be a few questions that are gonna come off of it. But before we start, I just want to say that this is the first time I ever got onto the Zoom before Sammy, and I figured out how to do it by being early. Sammy is not a person who wastes time. It's a pleasure. Every time, if my other interviews were like this, it would be different. Anyways, here's my question. My question is, as I told you last week, I want to start a flow of working off what we've discussed so far.
Yes,
Something
but
you've
you
met.
will also be able in the future to ask me questions not related to the Holocaust, because, like I told you, okay, on my website, you will see a NBC News article that 3 years ago on Clubhouse, I answered questions for 16 hours straight. So
Wow.
obviously, in 16 hours, you don't talk just about the Holocaust.
Wow. So no wonder you think I'm
Okay.
burning out when I
And,
had
and,
enough after
and,
15,
and
20
in the
minutes.
room, coming in and out, there were at that time, there were about 60,000 people from all over the world.
Wow. 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 Okay. Um,
Okay. Okay.
this
I saw your reaction. Go ahead.
this is why you always think I'm burning out too quickly after 15, 20 minutes. Um, Okay, so here's my question. You've spoken in passing. You've spoken a lot, but mostly in passing about your family lifestyle. Your family lifestyle. You said that you thank God you were never separated from your parents, and you said that well, basically that this is the point that you were with your family, which was rare for that situation. So here's my overall question, and then maybe I have some specific things I'm trying to understand. What it's gonna be a big ball of a mess of a question, and then you dissect it, okay?
Okay.
Um, so first of all, I want to go over again the ages, if you don't mind, how old your parents were, how old you were. You said you were not even really aware because of the age you were at. You'll get into that. Um, what was the mood besides for the fear in general, but how did your father and mother keep it together? How did they handle? What did your family setting look like during this time? We'll start with that.
I have no memory. I have no idea. My
For
parents
what
did not
reason?
talk
How old
about
were you?
it. And at the same time, I was not smart enough to ask a lot of questions. I just knew how my father felt, and because I was very close to them, and I felt empathy. So the way my parents felt about that period of time, I felt the same way. Things have changed only when I was by myself and only when I started to speak. Because when
Right.
I started to speak, I started to speak about reconciliation. And intellectually, it's very easy to talk about. But here I am faced, okay, with a challenge to go to Germany to meet with descendants of high ranking Nazi criminals. And I did not know how I feel emotionally because my father always said that he will never set foot in Germany. He will never buy a German product. And until that time, I felt the same way. But I wanted to be authentic. And I wanted my head and my heart to be connected intellectually and emotionally. And I decided to go. and it was probably one of the best moves that I ever made in my life.
Right.
So when you are asking me about that period of time, I can just use, how shall I put it, uh, educated guess. I do
Okay.
not know anything, for a fact. So it's an educated guess, and a lot of it is based on my assumptions, but not
Okay.
on something that I really know.
Okay. So let me ask you questions in specific. How old were you when the war, when things hit the fan, as
Okay. Well,
whatever?
I was born on December 21, 1939, which means September, October, November, okay, December. So it was almost 4 months that the war started.
Okay.
Okay, we were deported in 1941 because in 1941, on June 22nd, the Wehrmacht attacked former Soviet Union from the west. Behind them were the special killing groups called Einsatzgruppen, and there were the Romanian troops. And the Romanian troops occupied part of Western Ukraine, an area called Transnistria. And that's why we were deported by the Romanians and not by the Germans. At the same time, what happened is my mother and I were born in uh, in an area called Bukovina, which was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. But because Bukovina was part of Romania at that particular time, Ion Antonescu, he deported most of the time, mostly people that were from the periphery, like Bukovina and Basarabia, not necessarily from Romania proper.
Hmm.
Okay, so we have to understand that. So we were probably one of the first group of people that were deported to Transnistria and there in a labor camp, Mogila Podolsk.
Okay. Now, I think you've spoken of a brother. How many siblings did you have? How old were they
I
in
did not
relation
have,
to?
I have only one sibling, a sister. She was born in 1946 when we returned uh, from the former Soviet Union. We returned to Romania. My father was born in Romania proper.
Okay, sorry. Um, how old were your parents, if you don't mind, at this time, at 1939, 1941,
Uh, uh, 33.
33? And what was their mindset? They
33, let me see, 1941. Yes, 33.
what was their
Both of them.
mindset? They were well, you know what? Let's get back to that. My Before that, you went to a labor camp. So this was a place where a person loses control, right? This is not a place where a person is in charge of their own destiny.
Correct.
So what did they experience? How did they handle it? What was the situation?
Uh,
Even if you don't remember for yourself, but how did they
well,
express it?
well, first of all, they had to do whatever they were told to do. All right. They had no choice. At the same time, not only did they have to fight to survive because the conditions were not that great, but they also had to make sure that I will survive. Okay.
Right.
So, not far. Again, it's an educated guess. Uh, Next to the camp, there was a farm owned by Germans. So I believe that, okay, most of the assignments were working on the farm, okay, or whatever, they told them to do. But that's just an educated guess. I do know vaguely that my father was in the Romanian military, in the cavalry. Most of the soldiers were analphabetic. So my father, being more literate, so he was mostly in the administrative, office working. So, but that's an educated guess.
Understood. And you were all able to live together, your mother, your father, and yourself?
Yes, except when they did the medical experiments, they probably took me somewhere and they brought me back.
So it's not like the way they did.
I don't, I, again, it's an educated guess. Okay. You have to understand that. I don't believe that I was in the clinic or in the hospital for a long period of time. So maybe, let's assume maybe one day or whatever. I don't know. And they brought me back to my parents.
Understood. I'm just trying to understand because you said there were three different types of camps, and most times, because it makes for good
There
movies,
were three type of camps.
right? So because it
And,
makes, sorry,
and in 1991, after 6 years after the war, finally another group of people were recognized as Holocaust survivors, and they are called the hidden children. But that was
right,
very much later. For 46 years, they were not recognized as survivors, only the ones that were in the camp.
right. So in the movies, because it makes for a good movie, they make the movies about the horror camps and the terrible ways that they were living. And when they talk about experiments, they were, torturing people while they were conscious. So I'm trying to get a picture in your circumstance of what the housing seemed like. And also, since you're talking about the experiments, if we could talk about that also.
I cannot give you any details because I found out that I was subjected to medical experiments only when I was 31 years old. Before
Wow.
that, I was in constant pain, but I did not know, and even the doctors could not tell me where the pain is coming from.
Wow. You don't know which camp you were in that you can look
Uh,
back and do some research, something like this?
to be honest with you, most of the things that I know of is how life was in the camps, and I talked about it before. This is from people, other survivors that told their stories. The only thing that I know, when I found out in 1971 that I was subjected to medical experiments, uh, okay, I didn't do anything about it for a very long time, but in 2002, I decided to ask for compensation without having any proof. And the Germans obviously would not want to pay, okay, without any proof. They tried to evade, having to pay.
Right.
Uh, but based on their records, okay, they acknowledged that I was subjected to medical experiments, and they paid me one time 2,500 euros in 2004.
Understood.
So
Okay.
I have, uh, because I have the records, okay, the Germany admitted that I was subjected to medical experiments. You can see it, the letter on my PowerPoint. So, but I did not go into it. People have asked me many times if I'm interested, what experiments they did on me. And my answer is no. First of all, it takes a very long time. There's a lot of bureaucracy. You have to have lawyers, cost money. And as okay, I don't know if all the records are here because they destroyed a lot of the records. So the question that I'm having, okay, so I found out. So what? It's not going to help me with the pain. It's not going to do anything. So instead of wasting a lot of negative energy, I concentrate on doing something positive and educating the next generation. So I'm really not interested, because it will not change my life.
Right. They also say that when people go through psychology school, they make sure to have therapy because once you start learning about different kinds of disorders, you start wondering if you have it. So what I'm saying is that if you were to find out what your experiments were, it might just be more of a stress on you. It'll creep into your mind. You'll think about it. Maybe it's better you don't know for this reason
I, I,
also.
I don't know. I'm not interested. And like I said, it would take years. Okay.
Right.
And who knows, with a lot of money, lawyers, documents. I was homeless. I don't have any documents anymore.
Right. Right. Okay, let's talk about a happier time and something maybe you're more familiar with. Could we talk about what was it like after the war, rebuilding? How does a family go about setting back
Okay.
their roots?
Well, unlike my mother and I, my father was born in Romania proper.
Hmm.
And since we were deported by the Romanians in 1946, the Romanian government allowed a small group of Jews from the former Soviet Union to repatriate. My father, being an anti communist, decided to choose the lesser of two evils, and he decided to go back to Romania and he settled in a very small town in Transylvania, where I grew up until 1961 when the whole family went to Israel. So, uh, being so young, basically, I did not know anything, did not understand a lot of the things. Okay, as a little child, what's happening in the world is not on your mind. You don't read the newspapers, you don't listen to the news and all of this. So primarily it was a quote unquote a normal childhood. Had to
Right.
learn the language and everything else. We went to school,
Right.
belonged to Bnei Akiva, which is a Jewish religious Zionist organization. So I grew up, okay, quote unquote, uh, a normal childhood, but only when I started to speak that my childhood was not really normal because I was with my parents and my parents reacted to what happened during those days. And every Holocaust survivor in a different way. And I felt the way my parents felt. So it was not my own personal feelings about the war, about the Holocaust. All I knew was how they felt, and I felt the same way. That's why I'm saying when I went to Germany to meet with the high descendants of high-ranking Nazi criminals, I did not know how I would react emotionally. But it was, like I
Because you
said,
always
one of
just
the
leaned,
best moves, one of the best moves I ever made.
understood. You always leaned on how they felt, and then you felt the same
Correct,
way. So
correct,
now you're going and you have to not follow what they would do and
right,
also figure out how you're going to feel about it for yourself.
correct.
It must have been pretty scary.
Well, I'm not the guy that gets easily scared, but it was, mostly the need to be authentic. So when I talk about reconciliation, like I said, intellectually, it's very easy to talk about. Okay,
Right,
but I wanted to make sure that I'm authentic and that emotionally I feel the same way. So there is no contradiction. There is no conflict between the head and the heart.
right, right. I know that my grandparents were also involved in reconciliation, but I think you speak about it in terms of making peace between people. With them, it was a matter of they became very, very good at figuring out how to find people's valuables, people's money, and then people found out about it. So then they started having to go back to Germany over and over to help others to reclaim their lost money. But yeah, so when you say reconciliation, I automatically think go to there. I think you're speaking about something else. The
Correct.
reconciliation of future descendants to be able to go back to being normal human beings and get along.
Yes, and that's exactly what I believe in, and I believe in bringing people together,
Right,
and not what's happening in this country or in other countries. And this is dividing between different groups.
right,
So I believe very strongly in unity.
right.
Okay,
So you,
because a lot of people do not understand that what happens to me, whether you know it or not, will affect you. What happens to you will affect somebody else. We are
yes,
interrelated. I use a quote very frequently, and I say, to the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you are the world.
yes,
And that's what I'm saying. We are interrelated, and that's why we have to care. Elie Wiesel, I believe it was him, and he said that the biggest crime that a human being can commit is indifference.
right. So you were not involved in any of the financial reconciliations. This stuff that was not your business, your world.
No, my father did not want blood money, but since Bukovina was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, okay, he wanted to be recognized as a German subject, not citizen, because he never lived in Germany, but as a German subject. And once recognized as a German subject, he would get, okay, a life pension.
Hmm.
He had to go through extremely long, difficult interview to prove that his culture is the German culture. And he was approved for it, both of my parents. So they got a large amount of money initially, and then every month for the rest of their lives, they got a pension.
That's good. That's good. That I mean that connects
But
to
but but
where
it- but but it was not uh, to get possession because my parents were not wealthy. Okay, it was not to get money for all the people that were murdered by the Nazis. Like for my father said, from 42 people, only two survived. So, but he did not want what we call or what is called blood money.
understood. Um, what was I gonna say? Yeah, getting back to life after the war. I guess like you were saying, you were a child, so it's not like you grew up then and you grew up now and you have something to compare it to. You only have one childhood, and it your parents try to pad you from reality. But there must have been a lot of building involved. I mean, it seems that there's a few different steps in generations. You know, there's the generation of destruction, then there's the generation of rebuilding, then there's the next generation where you know you want to send your child to college. You may have been working more menial work, but then the next generation you want them to have a more professional work and so on. So I imagine, without knowing anything, that your father was from the generation of rolling up his sleeves. Unless, but you said he had administrative skills. I'm just trying to understand what happened. You know, like where he comes back to.
Well, after the war, when he came back to Romania, he worked. Okay,
Mhm,
uh, so there were many farms that individually you could not have a farm individually. So
mhm,
they had a collective. Okay, and my father worked for that collective. Okay. Uh, he was a bookkeeper. I remember he used to take me to go to different farms when he had to pay them the money for the work that they did. So we used to go to different farms and everything else, but it was a rebuilding period of time for them. For me, it was later on the beginning of not feeling so raw about the things that I went through. So for the
Right.
Holocaust survivors, the older generation, for them, the pain is raw. For me, it's not. So
Right.
it's easier for me not to be so emotional about it, like the other
Right.
ones, because when they talk and memories come back, it's very raw and it's very emotional for them. It's not for me. For me, I just presented an fact. That's what happened. Move on.
Understood. So this collective, as you describe it, it's almost like a kibbutz or a moshav.
Well, the socialist form of it, yes.
And how is the socialist form different than the Israeli form?
Well, in the Israeli form, I mean, they decide what they want to do and how they want to build their lives and how to
I see.
work in this. In a socialist communist country, everything is coming from the top. You don't have control. You don't have any control. I want to do
Understood.
this. I want to do that. Okay, do I like it? I don't like it. You don't have a choice.
Understood. You're given your options and that's it.
Just only one option.
Understood. You can't say I'm gonna do eggs or I'm gonna do corn or this or that. If you're
No,
lucky and you get told you're
no,
doing
no.
corn, you're doing this.
So sometimes if you work with somebody, you know them, you friend somebody, they're going to do you a favor or whatever it is. But and in general, you don't have control.
Understood. Understood.
Yeah,
Maybe
the
next.
only control is that you're going to do what they ask you to do, or you quit. This is part of the problem, even here in the United States. Okay, you see how things are changing slowly and going too far to the left, and you lose control. Take a look, for instance, in schools. The parents are losing control. It's what the schools are deciding, what to teach, what not to teach, how to teach it. So this is part of the problem of the progress going towards too far to the left, towards socialism. And most of the people do not understand what socialism really means. Is that you have certain options to follow or not to follow, but you are not really in control of your own life. You're in
Understood.
control of what you do as far as deciding, I do want to work, let me work somewhere else or something. It's not it's not the utopia, okay, the silver lining, what people think of socialism. As a matter of fact, in socialism, what they do, they use other people's money. A lot of things are free.
Uh-huh.
But there's no such thing as free lunch. So and eventually, what happened is they became bankrupt. They couldn't do it. And right now, with very few exceptions, all the socialist countries do not exist anymore.
Right. Very interesting. And you're right. Most people don't know what socialism truly is. They understand the concept, but a
Right.
concept doesn't tell you the end result or the feelings you're going to experience.
Well, people are forgetting the slogan. Uh, the road to hell is paved with well-intentioned people. So yes, they have good ideas, okay,
Right.
but they don't think of the long term and the unintended consequences.
Understood. Understood. Okay. Maybe next time, not for sure. Well, I can't tell you. I can't give you a hint to what we're going to talk about.
No,
But
no,
I,
I
but
don't
I,
want to because I want it to be authentic and I want to speak
right,
on.
right. But as always, it's a pleasure to have you on, and thank you for this. It's not 60 hours. I apologize, but it's definitely informative, and it's always a pleasure to have you on.
My pleasure. Okay. And let's keep it going. Okay. There are so many things you can talk about. Okay. And doesn't have to be just about the Holocaust.
Okay.